Hello, everyone. I'm gonna wait just one more minute as people come in.
Can you see from
Yeah. You just have it open, right? Anyone can come in.
there? No, there is a waiting room.
No.
I am watching it over here though. Charlie says, I had a hard time finding this meeting. That is regarding the availability of the Zoom link that was.
Yeah, I had requested that would be on the website, Charlie, and unfortunately that was not done. It's the same Zoom link from the past meetings though, so I'm probably just gonna change it all to have the same Zoom link at the committee page, so it's just always the same and makes it a lot easier that way. All right,
We did
I
go
hope
back.
that information gets out to the public.
Yep, we did go back and make sure it was available on our social media pages, Charlie, as well. So thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Yeah, I saw the agenda. I just couldn't find the link.
all righty, well, with that, we'll get started here. The first item on the agenda is, and according to the recently passed policies of the committees, we all need to adopt a mission statement, so to speak, basically defining what the role of the committee is. That way it also is easy for the public to understand why we're here and what we're doing. So I just wrote out a pretty basic sentence here that's on the agenda. The Economic Development Committee is charged with researching and making recommendations to Town Council on economic matters in an effort to support the long-term viability and health of the local economy. Are there any thoughts on that or suggested changes for that?
I think it sounds great.
Beautifully written? Yeah,
Yes.
all right.
The work of scholars.
Well, thank you, so. All right, so if everyone's good with that, we'll adopt that as a language for the committee then. All right,
Do we need to take an official vote on that within the committee? I know that in the way the new policy is written, there are some things that need to be voted on. Is this one of them?
what gets voted on is if we're making a recommendation to the council.
Okay.
Yeah, so as long as there's consensus on this, I think we're good. The next item is the 4 Main Downtown Project, and we have Ann here again. Thank you very much for joining us. Last time we met, we just had a brief introduction and talked about basically her assistance here with downtown efforts. I've compiled a list of some of the work that's been done to date regarding the downtown. When Cody McEwen was chairing this committee, he had done quite a bit of work relating to the downtown. They created a downtown action plan in 2020. That can be seen on the committee page. There was a community development block grant in which we were awarded $300,000 to improve the downtown. There were cost issues, increases that required us to basically focus just on Veterans Park, which is at the end of the downtown. There was a CIRD workshop. We won a national competition to offer some redesigns to the downtown commercial properties. And probably the biggest document that I'm going to suggest we look through and pull from is the Katahdin Gazetteer. That was a multi-month regional effort of basically setting goals for the region in terms of what we'd like to see in various aspects of the town, not just downtown. But there are significant portions dedicated to improvements for downtown. So with those four major achievements that we've accomplished, I think we should start from there and pull from probably the Gazetteer is my suggestion, because that was a community oriented basically document where we pulled from all the different voices of the community and the region on what they'd like to see for the downtown. Are there any thoughts on that? And Anne, did you have any suggestions on how we move forward with this specifically? I know you're familiar with all of these documents. Do you feel like pulling some ideas from the Gazetteer might be a good start?
Yeah, absolutely. Just keep in mind my internet's unstable, so just wave if I drop out and I'll use the phone. I think the big thing for this group, which is why it's so great for me to be here and observing, is to think about your downtown as an asset to all of your economic development work you're doing. Everything from dealing with short-term rentals to trail projects, wayfinding. It's really great to just be able to think about how the downtown fits into that, because it's one of your major assets, without a doubt. So I'm just really at this point thinking about, you know, the work you're doing and doing a lot of listening. I think using documents and plans that you have is a great jumping off point, like the Gazetteer. I mean, ultimately, we want you to pick some small project to do in the downtown with a very small amount of money, but something that would be visible and have impact and relate to your other economic development initiatives. And, you know, it might take us a while to figure that out. So I'm not concerned about the timeline. We can kind of dive in whenever you say, Steve, if there starts to be direction and or gelling of conversation.
Well, thank you for that. That actually does kind of segue into the next item here anyway, where we're looking at snowmobiling and parking throughout the downtown. That is an issue that I know we've been hearing from a lot of local businesses on the lack of access that snowmobilers have to their businesses and therefore have to restrict their hours. We do have, if everyone's okay, we can just pivot to that and just talk about that issue, if that's fine. And we do have a member from KTP here as well. They own the lot at the end of the street on the corner of Central and Penobscot, which will be the top, one of the areas that we discussed. I met with our manager and John Raymond on proposing some new routes that can go through town for snowmobiling. There's only a few copies, so feel free to share.
Do you want me to share
And you can share your screen.
some
Yeah.
of these on there?
So that's one map. This is a different map. If you don't mind passing that down too. And then third map. And that one's for you, Peggy. Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay, you're gonna have to. I don't want to stop sharing.
That's okay. I can show the map from here, the camera and stuff. You don't have to stop sharing.
Where did the meeting go?
Technology.
Oh. I do.
Hang on, everyone. Sorry.
Let me just a moment here.
Well, if he gets that full screen, he'll be able to see. Stop share button.
I have to pull up those pictures again.
There it is.
Yeah, well, I've got a few I'm gonna load over there and be able to grab. I can only see one screen at a time while I'm doing this, so. You'll see a suggestion for improving the technology around virtual meetings in my office for pretty soon. All right,
Screen share.
now, which one are we going to be
It would be the existing one, the red one.
existing trail?
All right, can you all see that on the Zoom? All right. So that's our existing, you don't have that map in front of you, but that's the existing trail that we have right now. And as we have our chief safety officer here, he can attest to, I'm sure, the potential dangers of the existing route as it goes along Central Street right now. Not only does it go away from downtown, which is here, but it also, has many different hazards going across or along Central Street. So when we met with John Raymond, we had some suggestions on how we can change it. There's two different routes that were proposed, not that one. Yes. So here, this would go on the street that's kind of buffered by a median where Baxter State Park is and Stearns is. And that's a map that you have in front of you. That's, I believe, a dirt road, isn't it? Or somewhat paved. Somewhat paved. So it would go behind Central Street and not go along it. It would go into the parking lot of Tractor Supply so that people can go across to still get gas at Urban. And then they can come back around out of the parking lot there, go across Wausau Street and behind the apartment buildings. And then it would connect back down to where
This is
the existing route is, yeah, with Peddler's Hill.
Existing road.
And then if you want to go to the larger one, should be that, yeah. So that's a larger view of it, and you can see the yellow on the proposed change. That red can stay the same in the bottom there. And then the yellow, basically this would come through the school parking lot area or around it. And then go basically down Penobscot all the way downtown and connect back up to where there's existing routes by the hospital. That would allow people to access the downtown, and a big portion of that is having really good signage. The Northern Forest Center had basically paid for at least a portion of a wayfinding design that could be used throughout the whole region. And so the designs are already made for signs if we want to create new signs that point people in different directions. If we want to say downtown, if we want to use it for snowmobiling exclusively, if we want to use it for businesses, whatever we want to do, the design already exists. But signage would be really important for especially creating a new route and for people who live here to understand some of these changes and what the flow of traffic would be and all that. Are there any initial thoughts on this proposed change? Peggy?
I would suggest that you consider not just snowmobiling, but the ATV.
Yes.
Making it a multi-use trail or connector throughout this town, and so do it so that it's signed for ATV use and for snowmobiling use.
Yes, I am saying snowmobiling because we're in that season,
Right.
but yes, it was intended also for ATVs.
So the red, you said the red would stay,
No, the red is how it
is
exists.
where it is right now, that would be gone completely.
No,
Just the bottom portion, so in between the yellow. So this portion would stay.
This is the part that comes up behind the
Yeah.
school back path,
Yeah.
up to Peddler's Hill. The new one would take over there and come with the yellow line out behind Wausau Street, up through the Katahdin Inn parking lot, and then head out this way through Balsam and up to the Pomola Lodge of Baxter Park Inn. So it would come back up to Central Street for this last bit that exists now, I guess.
And then it would just connect into that existing route here to offer a route to go downtown and then back out of downtown. Do you have any thoughts on that, Tom, in terms of safety, traffic?
Well, I'm still trying to wrap it in my head here. When they come across Central Street, they're going to stay where they were. They're gonna go across the little park and up over the hill on the back side, correct?
Up to Peddler's Hill, and then
Right.
it would veer out
And then-
towards Wausau.
So it's taking them off Central Street, that whole
Yeah.
section of Central
Yep.
Street.
And that, I think, is the most dangerous part of it all.
Okay, thank you.
Because of the speeds that are usually traveled with cell phone traffic.
And really, this is,
Now, Matt, Council Bragdon had his hand up.
oh, go
at
ahead,
one
Matt,
point.
sorry.
Yeah, so I don't know if it was just me, but your photo never changed when you were describing the routes and stuff. So it was very difficult for me to follow along. I had to keep jumping between photos. Just for recording purposes, it did not change. However,
Okay.
I'm definitely in favor of the alternate route, the green one, not because it's closer to my house, but when you're thinking about snowmobiling and ATVing, you want a nice ride, and I think that ride would be extremely nice. You're keeping it away from the main routes of traffic. Goes out by the airport, so if people want to go to the airport, they can on snowmobile. Millie's is right there where the road is. And then the loop around. I think it's just a really nice route to Veterans Park, and I would definitely be in favor for that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. When you say you didn't see the pictures change, could you tell me what you did see?
Nothing, just the red line, the one that says existing trails access is the only one we can see.
Oh, okay, that's weird.
No, you have to stop sharing and then share it.
And then share the new
Yeah, just
window.
because you brought it up on your screen, we see it, but those at home zooming don't see it.
I swear, we're very advanced people.
As a society, I don't know about as an office. Okay, so now I will stop sharing this and go through the other ones.
Just that one, yeah, that is fine.
Okay.
Thank you, Peter.
I'm glad you can all see this in live action, so you can understand my request for updated technology to facilitate these meetings in my office. Wonderful. All right, so screen share, and we're looking for
The larger view.
the larger view, which is. Can you see which one that is?
This one here.
That one.
Yeah.
All changes.
There we go. See that one?
It
All right.
has the red and the yellow on it.
Yes. good.
Okay,
Yeah, so the red is the existing trail the way it is. The yellow includes both sections of changes we just proposed. So coming from here, this is where it crosses Central Street and goes up to Peddler's Hill. This is where it would shoot out towards crossing Wausau and then up around, crossing again Wausau to the Katahdin Inn parking lot, and then heading through the parking lot and up Balsam Drive to the other hotels here.
So basically, the only thing that would stay the same is that red line in between the two yellow. That would stay the same. Everything else would change with this proposal.
And this yellow here is the suggested allowance for the downtown businesses to be able to benefit from the snowmobile traffic better.
What Matt was talking about was the green line, which we haven't looked at yet, correct? He was talking about the green proposed route, which goes out near the airport and across the mill site.
Yes.
I wasn't able to open that file on my computer.
Okay.
Yeah, there was another suggested route that would go, if you want to follow my finger with the mouse,
Sure.
that would go basically off of this yellow and then come down around towards the airport area and then come through to where the baseball field is at the Elks Land, cross over and connect to where Little Italy is on that road, and then come all the way down and go across the walking bridge that's there. and then come out of the mill site, go across Mystery Trail, then cut over to Veterans Park. So that was another suggested route as well. If you all followed that. That one would just kind of have a different access to the other side of downtown.
Were those on the screen able to follow that with my mouse?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do have that slide open on my laptop. If you guys give me permission, I can share it. But, or I can drop it in the chat, but I see that map.
Hang on a moment.
Are there any issues with having snowmobiles go through, like the stoplight downtown and then also going onto the Stearns campus?
Okay, so this is, Anne is sharing her screen with the,
There you go.
with the trail that was proposed for. This comes off of Wausau here. Goes towards the airport, along the fence of the airport,
On the outside of the airport.
on the outside, of course. Crosses down into the Elks softball field area, and then down, oh, she's sharing her screen, so she's running the mouse. So I thought I was doing a real good job there. And then, of course, yes, where her mouse is now is the walking bridge crossing the river from Little Italy, and then, of course, Congress Street, Mike Mishu Trail alongside of that, and then down
Veterans Park.
down over to Veterans Park.
So the issue with that obviously is good in the sense that it avoids more major areas of traffic again, but if you want to go to other parts of the downtown because it's one-way traffic, you would basically have to park and walk, making it harder for those businesses again, because people already access that area of the downtown already to go to Schoodic and the ones that are down there, but on the other end, that's where they're really not receiving that volume.
Tom, it looks like you might have a comment.
Well, I got a couple of questions on that one. Number one, the footbridge. Are they gonna replace the footbridge?
Well, they would, I believe,
Improve it.
eliminate the railings that are there
Or it's not wide, okay,
and place it with beams and a new platform going across, it, according to John Hoy.
does, in my second question, does John feel that that is a need?
Need in terms of accessing downtown, yes.
Yeah, he does, okay.
It gives an opportunity to come at it from a different angle. And the way that he spoke about it was including, well, so if you start from where the bulk of our visitors stay at Pomola or Baxter Park, in order to access this side of downtown, from where they're staying, they would have to go all the way down, out around the sports complex and the high school, out the Stacyville Road, out to the Hubert Road, cross, come down the pole line by the hospital, and then out around, cross the tracks, down into Veterans Park. Part of that would be eliminated if we allow the proposed section of trail that went from the high school over to Penobscot Avenue and down. But depending whether or not that is allowed to travel along the entirety of Penobscot Avenue would mean the access, would nod to the access of both sides. That makes sense?
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
So I do have a question, if I can, if I may. I
Please.
know I'm a visitor. Snowmobiles down Penobscot Avenue, how would you accomplish that? Sidewalks? Would you eliminate?
They would just drive with traffic.
So would you eliminate one side of the street parking? With the snow sleds to come down?
No, they would basically just act like a vehicle.
So they'd be out on the road. Really?
Thank you.
Do you know how expensive that is? to replace those skis?
That's up to them.
Yeah,
If they want to do it. What we're seeing is a chunk of our snowmobile tourism traffic has already begun to head north to the more accommodating communities. And from my perspective, where I sit and speaking with the local business owners, it would behoove us to adapt so that we can keep that traffic.
I mean, I'm pro, because as president of the small article
Sure.
for a couple of years, so. I'm a proponent more than anything. But I was just wondering how you would logistically handle
Yeah, I really feel signage would be probably the biggest thing that we can do in terms of making it very clear where they go. And like Peter was saying, I mean, there are other towns that are doing this. And I feel for the sake of our local economy, we should really be rolling out a red carpet for snowmobilers and ATVers. I mean, it's such an enormous influx of money that could be going into our downtown and through the community.
In a
If we
very
just,
short season comparatively.
Yeah. If we just do a few small things to make it more inviting and make it feel like this place is set up for them to enjoy in that way. So my suggestion is we look at adopting a new route where we would want to place signage and what we would want it to say, and park areas of parking. And that's one of the areas where, again, we have a member from the KTP here. And I suggested perhaps having parking in place of where there was a proposed playground on that lot on the corner for ATVers and snowmobilers. Did you have anything you want to add to that, Eric?
I'm excited to see and talk with anybody who's got some planning documents or can help me integrate this into our planning for sure. I think it's overall, as far as a development thing, I think it's great. And with my byway mind on, one thing I'd recommend is the intrinsic value. I know it seems maybe a little silly because you're just trying to bring snowmobiles through town, but if there's one route over another may offer 2 or 3 more convenient stops or cool views or a convenient place for 3 snowmobiles to pull over and sit at a table and have a lunch. Those sort of features would make it like even more snowmobile friendly, and you can brand off that. You can market off that and say, hey, come to Millinocket. They really have this cool, route for snowmakers, and here's some of the intrinsic value of that route, not just access to downtown. Just from my tourism branding marketing hat on.
Thank you, Eric. And Matt?
Yeah, just kind of bouncing off what he said. That's one of the biggest things snowmobilers look for, including myself. Is cool spots to sit. One of the coolest things that I like to do is take lunch with me and sit on my snowmobile. Just have lunch somewhere out in the woods. And the alternate trail, it hits the airport, which in itself is absolutely beautiful. We're getting ready to do all these projects to it, which would add a whole scene for snowmobilers and ATVs to stop and you'd be like, and actually enjoy it. On top of the long route. But my real question is, for the sake of argument, what would be the harm in doing the green route and the alternate route that you were referring to? Why couldn't we do both?
Well, first show us your baby, please.
It's on large screen.
There we go.
I've been wanting to ask that the whole time.
But that was the idea, actually, of doing both routes. There's no reason we can't.
So long as the proper adaptations are made to the footbridge so that we
Yeah.
are able to pass traffic.
And Arcatautum would have to approve, obviously, snowmobilers and ATVers going through their land as well.
Quick question about
Yeah,
the-
please.
the green route. Why not come up, after you get over the footbridge, come up straight and then up to Katahdin Avenue and then down towards Veterans Park? That would give you a nice view of the mountain. if they're
So you're
coming up
saying
that way.
going up that road further?
Yeah, so like when you come over the footbridge by Grant
Uh-huh.
Street School, you just keep going straight. I think it's Cherry Street or something, and it comes up. to
So the footbridge that we're talking about is actually, so this is the street you're talking about.
Oh, okay. Oh,
So,
you're doing a different one. Yeah.
From Millinocket's past, there was a footbridge, a very narrow footbridge.
Oh, okay.
It's just for walking traffic
Gotcha.
across the stream here, which
Gotcha.
connected the community of Little Italy with the mill where they were.
Gotcha, okay, okay.
So the idea is to take it off of this kind of main road as much as possible.
Yeah.
Bring it down around the back of that part of our community here, and then just, this is that footbridge. This way.
But that's, well, I guess that could still make sense though, because then you
This
take a
area
left on,
has an incredible view of the mountain.
oh, it does, okay.
Yeah, and then, yeah, I guess it could potentially go up Cherry Street. I
Yeah.
think is what you're
Yeah,
referring
yeah,
to.
that's-
This area is Cherry Street.
Yeah.
and then Catawba, top of the pond.
The good thing about it going up there past the driving bridge is that it's all green space. So in the winter time, it'll just be snow. So that whole stretch right above the bridge,
This here.
it'll all just be along the river,
Mhm.
on snow, not on the road.
Mhm.
So it really minimizes as much road as possible.
Makes sense.
And then this over here, this stretch is all unused, you know, parking area and land along the river as well.
Yeah, so I have a question. So you've spoken to John Raymond, and any of these new routes where there needs grooming, he's assured that grooming's gonna happen, or how do you,
Yeah,
what's the
so
plan around that?
grooming is another topic of discussion for John. It's possible that he's gonna take over some of those responsibilities for the in-town grooming. I don't want to speak for him or go beyond my purview, but if that's the case, then he would obviously have a lot more work to do in terms of this, and I don't want to speak for him, so.
But
He
that,
wasn't
that
able
is
to-
on the mind of him and others who are
Yeah.
part of this suggestion.
I mean, they proposed it, so I'm assuming they know that it's something they would do.
But that would get added, if we put those in, Jane, those would get added to our in-town trails. So they would get a grooming grant.
Right. There was
Um,
some conversation between two of the local clubs, one who currently does it, and one who does not currently do it, to understand who's going to do it moving forward.
Anne, did you have something?
Just a couple questions, comments. When you bring people into town, it's awesome for the businesses, you know, eating, stopping, walking around, bathrooms. So just keep in mind signage for restrooms. Whether it's, you know, something else on the trail, I'm sure it's part of what you're thinking, but just being in town and eating and drinking, people will want to know where the restrooms are if they're not in an establishment. And I think this is an opportunity for Millinocket to bring the businesses together to think about some coordinated events at a certain point, you know, coordinated thematic thing happening on a big Saturday in, you know, March when it's a busy time. But it's a great way to engage the businesses because you have this population coming in and this traffic coming in, just like you're talking about those little view sheds with picnic tables. This is kind of another piece. This is kind of part of the experience, and it's a really positive thing to add to the concept.
I'm glad you brought up those 2 points. We actually have the chair of the events committee here, Matt Bragdon. And then also in terms of bathrooms, we have Eric Goodwin here with KTP. That's something we're actually looking at using the KTP lot for, or at least coordinating something regarding bathrooms for that area of town. So those 2 things are definitely in discussions right now. I appreciate you bringing that up.
I'm down for events.
Yes.
Charlie Cerami did have his hand up a moment ago.
Yeah, Charlie, I saw your hand up. I was gonna get back to Eric for a second, though. If you still wanted to talk after that, I'll call on you. Eric, in terms of bathrooms and signage and just how this would all tie together and perhaps have the KTP lot as a part of this. As I mentioned before, we had designs made for signs that could be used regionally, have a standardized design, basically. If we wanted to coordinate in the sense of having similar designs used, or at least being able to place signs for ATVs and snowmobilers using those designs, and even having trails, like trail maps on the lot as well. Is that something that you think we could integrate?
Off the top of my head, I think that's what the plaza is kind of designed for, to welcome a diversity of recreation. So included in the current elements, which have been worked up over time and informed by the Gazetteer and a lot of the folks work on it. Three of the centerpieces are downtown information. You know, hey, if someone lands in that plaza, they park there, what's in the downtown and how do I get where and what's child friendly? Another thing, of course, is the Byway Gateway. It's going to be a centerpiece of the Byway. So we want to make sure people get Byway information. And the other piece is Recreation Hub. And we want to make sure recreation obviously is front and center, not only for the region, but that's the theme of the Byway as well. And so that the information in that recreation hub is not defined yet. I would really be excited to talk with anybody who has some specific ideas around defining it and what they want included. Trail maps and such are dead on.
Thank you, Eric. Any questions or comments on that specifically? Okay. Charlie, did you still have something to say? You had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. You know me, I've always got something to say. Yeah. You know that I live on Main Avenue, which is 2 streets up from what we call downtown or Penobscot Avenue. 20 years ago, I opened a business called the Bicycle Inn on Main Avenue. That's at the house I live in today. I am no longer in business because, one of the reasons I am no longer in business is the town council and the business community really didn't cooperate with bicycles at the time. But bicycles at the cultural center that we call the library today have got a lot of connecting to your agenda for today. Here on Main Avenue, for instance, it has been difficult to walk down to downtown. The street cleaning has been improved this year. Now we have a plow that's keeping the sidewalks open. In the past couple of years, it was almost impossible to walk downtown. Well, the reason I bring all of this up is when I opened my business, Main Avenue, where my home is, where some homes on Highland Avenue, some other homes on Main Avenue, were within what was called the downtown business area. Now, I'm hoping everybody looking at this agenda, everybody that's looking at this question recognizes what the boundaries are on downtown businesses. Because again, this cultural center that we call a library could be the center of this town. And if we start recognizing that the boundaries are not just one street, and we get a clear definition of what downtown is, I think we'll start opening up the economy. And I guess I've had my say. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. You definitely bring up some good points there. One of them, which was biking and walking, and we actually have someone here for that as well. We're working on a study basically on making it the town more bike friendly and pedestrian friendly, if you wanted to speak to that project.
Yeah, Charlie, I'm glad you brought up the biking aspect again. That's one of the reasons we were looking again at making Central Street corridor safer and taking the snowmobile and ATV traffic off Central Street. So it fits right into this discussion and it will not be lost as we continue this discussion. So thanks, Charlie.
Thanks, Jane.
And there will be there'll be more official information on this coming out in the next few days, but we will be having a public meeting in April to go over those proposed well, suggestions for the bike ped routes through town.
Yep,
So
thank you.
stay tuned.
And then Eric, I'm glad you're here also to hear all of these things, because we have a lot of projects that obviously would intertwine with the KTP lot. Charlie's suggestion of looking at what downtown is in terms of businesses and perhaps expanding it beyond just the one street is definitely a very valid point. We do have businesses off of Penobscot that are typically not included or considered, part of the downtown. If we're looking at doing mapping and things like that, I would suggest we really make an effort to look at how to represent this area in general as being a downtown area, not just Penobscot Avenue.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I hadn't gotten to that level of detail on the exact map of downtown, but that helps me frame it from the beginning. I'm already thinking, of an area map that maybe has, 7, 8, 9, 10 dots that have a list on the bottom of names and types of businesses, and then maybe a zoom in of the downtown that's more specific, maybe up to the side. We'll have to look at the design, but excellent point. Thanks.
Eric, I think we have a meeting coming up this week. I can prepare enough to show you what that downtown zoning is, where that zone is, so we can focus in on what areas you can include in that.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, and I'll apologize ahead of time for the level of detail that I'm going to ask you to help me get connected with over the coming weeks.
Thanks.
Yes, Ann.
There are lots of ways to define your downtown. And I think you'd see statewide that most of the formal downtown programs, they focus on their core downtown commercial district, but it definitely bumps out into those side streets. Sometimes it's for a destination business, like a bike shop, like the burrito shop that's like in a, downstairs of a building or something. It's also a way to get people to walk around and move around. Like, you talk about the pedestrian, necessity and biking, and it's just a way to get people off of Penobscot Avenue to explore those neighborhoods. Sometimes it's because of unique architecture, or, there are all sorts of reasons, or like the best view of the such and such. But there are a lot of ways to think about the downtown just a little bit bigger than, just that one street. So it's a great direction to think about. It's part of your story.
Thank you, Ann. Eric?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight a feature we have in the plaza. I've got a list now, and it's growing in size because of the level of detail. But there's many elements going in. One of them is connectivity to other walking aspects of the town, and having that map, and then attaching to it health information that we still have to define and go after in the long term. How many steps to this part would burn how many calories, or whatever that iteration of information is going to be most useful for not just tourists. Really, this is one I'm thinking personally it might be more impactful for people that live in the area. They can integrate it into their day. But so that's an aspect of what we're thinking too, the walkability of the whole region with that as a hub. I want to make sure I mention that. I feel like there's so many topics that I could cover with you guys, but that one's directly related.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, those, for both of you, Ann and Eric, it would be great to have you a part of this conversation as it evolves. As I mentioned earlier in the meeting, we've been focusing as a committee for years on downtown related issues. So I think this is a good time for us to be collaborative and really define what it is we want to do and how to move forward from there. So thank you for that input. Do we have a chat there?
We do. Charlie's also looking to again. This
Okay.
is from Ann. Number of steps, calories burned is great. Public health info to include, and also opens up projects and maps like this on other funders,
Yeah.
two other funders. Sitting a ways away from the screen, so.
Charlie, did you have something?
Yeah, I just want to add, it's really a pleasure to be listening in on these progressive conversations. I really enjoy what you're expanding your boundaries, and and growing our economy. And I really want to say Steve and all the participants from the town council that are at this meeting. I'm really impressed with what you're doing. I wish I was 20 years younger, to really be a part of what you're doing. And I want to thank you because what you're doing is going to increase the property values. And I'll have something to leave my children. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. I really appreciate that sentiment. Thank you. Yes,
I do have one more question slash comment just before we leave the topic of the new snowmobile routes in town. So some of these will, are placing snowmobiles like on Penobscot Avenue, the whole length of Penobscot Avenue in the residential section that wasn't there before. Are there implications that we should be thinking about, or is it just, as far as our residents are?
I
Or
believe we
just
already,
communication going forward, that this is coming. I just want to think from the residential
Yeah.
section, of our residents, what that might entail.
I believe we already have the ATV trail going along Penobscot, isn't that right? The ATV already goes down that, it's all marked on the road, it's kind of faded now, but the ATV trail already goes through there. But yeah, definitely letting the public know that they might see an increase in traffic and yeah, do you have thoughts on how to do that?
No, I just want to make sure our communication is going forward. I just didn't know what potential, if the implications or
Yeah.
downfall, now of the residents, if they've got all these snowmobiles, going by, new snowmobile traffic and what that would entail. Houses are close together and just people backing out of their driveway, they're gonna have to be more aware of this traffic. So more of a safety issue and communication and awareness. So just want to make sure that's set as well.
Sure, I think not only should communication increase to the community themselves,
Mhm.
specifically the areas that will see more traffic, but I think that it would be good for us to make sure that communication goes to the East Lawn Police Department as well, and of course, our emergency services staff in general, so that they're aware of the changes too, and help us in their regard.
And why we're doing it, it lends itself to Charlie's, comments, economic development and what we're hearing, so.
I think when you go to open this, when this discussion comes to the public, we're gonna hear it from the public. There's gonna be some major safety concerns, this whole thing. But it's all gonna be how we can handle it. We can handle it with signage and with making sure that we're going to uphold the rules that go along with this. They won't be doing 70 miles an hour down. I think that's what's all gonna play out.
And even then, connecting with the chamber, and, make sure that our hotels and short-term rental owners have all of the information on this available to be posted within their establishments and even, handouts, something they can take tangibly, with them, so that the visitors have all that information. It's one thing that we communicate with our community, but we also want to educate the visitors to the extent where they understand and, go about it safely.
Yeah, I would suggest that when you do your signage, that you put a speed limit on the signage. Because I have snowmobilers that go past my house in Snow Rocket. They're going the whole length of Spring Street and you can hear them because they're on car. So they're ripping their sleds up as they go. But you can hear them. But I worry about that when the banks are high, that you're not going to see them and you got to hit them because the liquid cooled quieter and the 4-strokes are quieter than 2-strokes. So I think that's going to be an issue. But then it's going to be an issue of educating people who live here, because what we found, I talked to John about it, is that it's not the visitors that come that kind of violate some of this, people that live here. That they're, some of the young people, or the people snowmobiling, I shouldn't say young people, are ripping from where they live to where the trailhead is, so that they don't get caught. Yeah. So they're really trying to get through town, and it's a little crazy to watch. So I think that we're gonna have to do something with people to do.
Well, yeah, it's the same idea comes to play with the ATV traffic as well. You know, it's more or less folks who live here that use it for regular transportation that go against the actual rules of the programming itself. So that would be something we would have to address and communicate more clearly as well.
Yeah, because, I mean, to be honest, John and I had a meeting last week, and we're talking about the ATV snowmobile park. It's gonna bring more people into the community, into the area. And if we're successful with this, the education piece and the enforcement piece and the identification of where the trails are, what the speed limit is, what the rules of the road are, will be a very key piece of that. Keep people safe.
Charlie?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Just to add to the conversation here, we're talking about four-wheelers as well as snowmobiles. You know, this could start as early as this summer. I remember the former owners of the Appalachian Trail Cafe came up with a proposal to have outdoor seating, outdoor picnic tables, outdoor dining. There was a small park directly across the street from their establishment that they were willing to pick up any messes that their patrons added to that downtown litter. You know, they were willing to maintain the area. And, you know, at the time, you know, we didn't have a progressive town council, and the idea was not allowed. And, you know, this could be as quick as this summer, you know, what we're talking about. And, you know, and again, I enjoy listening to this progressive town council. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. And I think you're right in terms of timeline. It's not only for the local businesses, but even just to maintain the traffic that we are receiving here. If we're not an attractive, appealing place for ATVers or snowmobilers to come in comparison to other towns, this is no longer going to be a destination that they're going to choose. And we don't want to miss out on that. And we also don't want to miss out people who are just getting into it to have a bad experience here and go somewhere else as well. So I think time is of the essence. We don't have, you know, other industries that can bring in the type of, you know, economic boost that ATVing and snowmobiling does. So I think this is definitely something we should move quicker on. And on that note, I think the next step would be kind of looking at signage and what that would look like, a communication plan for the public, and for the ATVers and snowmobilers as well. What kind of message we want to share with them in terms of going through our residential neighborhoods and speed limits and things like that. Are there any other suggestions of next steps? Okay, so those items will be brought up at the next committee meeting that is. And we'll move on to the next agenda item. Yes.
Whitney had asked me about the school, about going across the school complex. That's gonna be a change, but right now they're not allowed to snowmobile on that road.
Yeah, well, my question also is coming across that bridge, and I don't know if buses go across that bridge, what their routes are, but the snowmobiles will be going through the school parking lot, so I don't know if they can do that during school hours, I don't know what's allowed.
Yeah, I mean, you would have to go through the school to make sure they were okay with that. But I don't see a big issue other than, like I say, this road here, we never allowed. They're not allowed because the problem with it that we were having is people were trying to drive down that road, or kids were walking and skating. So
that's another item to reach out to the school on, then, is another next step. Thanks for that. Any other thoughts on the snowmobiling ATVing? Oh, Eric, did you have your hand up?
Hey, just a quick comment from the tourism side. I think it could be an excellent branding point at bridging from the safety, because a lot of people driving through town that aren't from the region, it'll be very foreign to them to be driving with ATVs and snowmobiles. But from a tourism side, we can brand it as this, this is a snowmobile ATV friendly community. So as a tourist here, it's, that's part of the experience. But I just think that could be a really fun point and really penetrate with a lot of tourists and give an authentic experience.
Thank you for that.
I'll try to attend further meetings. Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Eric. So with that, we'll move on to the next item here. A lot of this is kind of reading for when you're back home, but I had created this document at the Sustainability Committee and passing it off to the Economic one. Basically, it's a way of framing how capital flows through the community. I'll let you read a lot of it at home, but I wanted to just kind of give a very simple diagram of kind of what exactly I'm talking about. It's something called world systems theory, which basically looks at how different nations are in comparison when it comes to their economic influence on the world. There's a core, there's three different types of countries. There's a core, semi-periphery, and a periphery country. The cores are those who are much more influential on the world economy, like the United States, Canada, Japan, more advanced countries. Semi-periphery are ones that have a role but are still dependent on core countries, something like Mexico, India. They definitely have an influence, but they don't really have that overall control. And then the last one being periphery countries. So those are ones like Nicaragua or other smaller countries that are generally extractive in nature. We extract resources from them and they don't receive a ton of return. So if you use that same kind of theory and you look at cities in the US, you could probably consider Millinocket as a periphery economy where it's very extractive in nature. And especially since the local economy has changed so drastically, a lot of the money is leaving the local economy more and more. When you have Hannaford's and Dollar Trees and Family Dollars and things like that, they may employ people and pay property tax, but a significant amount of those profits end up leaking from the economy. And the same thing is true if you have businesses like hotels and others who are more and more reliant on outside services and outside parks and outside items to keep their business going. So if you just use an example of a hotel for just demonstrative purposes, you're seeing basically money coming into the local economy. The hotel might employ some people, and those people will need food and housing and medical care. The hotel also sometimes will need food. The hotel will also employ services. Maintenance, things like that. Now, when you start breaking it all down and you go into housing, let's say we have a local owner versus a out-of-state owner. Obviously, if you have a local versus a, I'll just say foreign, a lot shorter. A lot of this local money will stay within the local economy. If you have someone who is from out of town who owns, or a larger company who owns housing in town, a significant amount of that money leaves. They may employ people to work on their maintenance or things like that, and then it basically circles back around. Now you have employees or workers who also need housing, and that housing again might be either going out of town or staying in town. And then the food is generally Hannaford, which the majority of that money leaves town. They also have employees. So you're seeing all these areas when it breaks down. And medical, we do have a regional hospital where they also have employees. But the significant amount of the supplies that they have and services that they have also come from out of town. So basically, it's looking at the whole web of how money comes into the town and where it all ends up leaving. And when you start breaking it all down and spreading it all out, you'll see the majority of money that comes into town ends up leaving. So my goal is to try and find every area we can to start retaining some of that money in the local economy and prevent a lot of this leakage. So this basically maps that out and all the other concepts and theories surrounding it. And I learned early on when I started putting this together, there is no list of all the businesses in town. And that kind of blew my mind, how we cannot have a list of businesses in town. At the time, there was a different director at the chamber before you, and the chamber was in a different state at that time. I thought that they, of all people, would have a list of all the businesses in town, but they did not. So I started.
Our membership organization, so wouldn't necessarily branch further than that.
Well, you'd think you'd have people who you'd want to become a member and a list of those people, so that you would have a complete list. But anyway.
I always thought the same thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you. So when you look at the document, though, you'll see all the businesses that I at least could find and compile. It looks at how many employees generally, whether it's locally owned or quasi-locally owned. And then also looking at how much of those products or services we can start looking at providing locally. That's one portion of this.
Is this up to date for this year, or is this from?
No, this is from a couple of years ago. There's some diagrams that are definitely better put than mine that kind of explain a very similar type of system on how money flows through the town, including tourist dollars. And then offering some suggestions and promoting entrepreneurship and filling local demand and things like that. I just wanted to give a brief summary so that you can at least have some context when you take this home. And
And that was available on the meeting info page on our website as well. Were those on the Zoom meeting able to access that document? Okay, thank you.
so feel free to look through that and we can discuss it more in detail. There are parts of it that are not completed that I felt would apply better to this committee than the sustainability one. And it's all more towards the end. I didn't want to offer a conclusion and get into municipal services and other things without having more of a group effort. But feel free to take this home and we'll talk about it more at a next meeting. Any thoughts on that?
Great work. Very thorough. I recommend it.
Thank you. All right. And then the last item here is short-term rentals. So we had Brandon share Bar Harbor's documents basically on how they did it. They had a change of ordinance that allowed for short-term rentals and how they regulated it. And it's actually very similar to what we're trying to achieve here. I re-listened to our last meeting and started making some of those edits in the document that we had been making edits to or suggested changes to. And as I was listening to it, I realized that basically every single issue that we had with this older document was represented in this Bar Harbor one. I'm assuming they had a lawyer and spent significant amount of time looking through the implications of this new ordinance. And again, I think this perfectly represents what we're trying to achieve. There'll be some changes and adaptations, but I feel instead of starting from scratch and starting from a relatively,
Yeah, hold on, Steve.
Yes.
These, were these shared with the email?
it went out to committee members. I don't know if it went to everyone.
Okay, I'm wondering if,
I had sent these to Design Lab to get posted on the website, so if it's not there, it will be there soon. So I apologize for that.
I can drag them in the chat if you want, if people want to.
That'd be great.
yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you for doing that.
It'll
I'm
save me
just your
some-
tech assistant today, people.
I appreciate that. In order for me to do that, I have to stand up and walk across the room. And
I'm only kidding. I'm happy to do it.
That's great. I appreciate your help.
But again, just going through these documents, you'll see one that's about 6 pages. That's the actual ordinance. That goes through every single issue that we had brought up, that community members and or short-term rentals have concerns over. And personally, I really feel that we should look at just adopting this and making adaptations to it to fit our own local code. You'll also see on one of the, there's a 2-page document that'll define bed and breakfast, it defines short-term rentals. I thought that was an important thing to include. One of them is, because Celeste at the last meeting had mentioned, what about those who have their own house and they want to rent out a room in their house? That's not considered the same as having a business, basically owning an apartment building or owning a separate second home or whatnot and renting out the entire unit. Not only are you taxed differently, but it's also a completely different function. The Bar Harbor plan or ordinance change accommodates that. So again, my suggestion is working off of this. Charlie, you have your hand up?
Yes, thanks, Steve. I listened in on the planning board. We discussed this subject for months after month after month. So I got a pretty wide angle view of this topic. My own personal view, I will give you here. And that is, you want to bring this into line with Bar Harbor. You want to bring this in line with Portland, who have major problems with housing, with rentals. We aren't going to have those kind of problems here in Millinocket for decades. This whole conversation today was about attracting people to the area. It was about transitioning to a balanced economy where you have tourism and industry. Any blockage that we put out there now to anybody that wants to invest in our community, whether they're from our town or from away, we do not, this is my own personal opinion, we do not want to put up those barriers. In years to come, I understand that these will be issues, but if we try to set the boundaries now, what we're going to do is turn people away. And when I say away, they will go to the unregulated communities around us. In other words, the lakes, the hillsides that are going to be developed right outside of town. They will go to the communities down east. They will go to the communities in Medway and Patton and Sherman. You cannot regulate this kind of investment by one town. If you try, you're going to just set yourself up for a loss of investment. And during this transitional time, we don't want to lose any investment. All right, you got my opinion on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. And I would like to respectfully push back a little bit. I would argue that the housing issue is all relative to the location. The numbers in Bar Harbor are different in terms of values of homes, but so is the income and the value of homes here. You know, it's relative. There are housing issues here already, I would say almost to the scale of Bar Harbor. It's just relative to the town versus the economy of Bar Harbor. But with that, even if someone like myself came in and bought an apartment building and I renovated it and wanted to rent it out, I would have to go through these exact same processes that are being proposed. I would have to have a life safety inspection. I would have to have everything signed off by the code enforcement officer. I don't see any of those as being restrictive. That's just making sure that there's a habitable place for someone to rent. And that's all that these really require, is just applying and making sure that there's a contact number and that the place is safe and habitable. I don't see that as affecting, hi Matt, I don't see that as affecting the the local economy. Matt, go ahead.
Eric had to leave, so I was waving bye to him.
Okay.
Yes. However, you know, if you're done, I will speak.
Please go ahead.
You know, Charlie, me and you had very similar viewpoints when all of this started being talked about. You know, me and you had very, very similar views. No regulations, nothing. I'm not sure if you were at the last meeting, but it was a very, very good meeting. There was quite a few people that attended that gave their opinion and views. And it was a great discussion. You know, we came to the conclusion that, you know, we don't want to bar anybody from doing this. We want to make it equal and fair, like Chairman Galib said. You know, it's only fair. You know, they might not be classified as the same business as like an apartment building, but they should be held to the same regulations. You know, they're still having people stay there. They're still bringing people to our area, and to avoid situations that we're seeing with LTRs in town, you know, we need to set some kind of rules. You know, and I'm not for, you know, setting, you know, an amount of money to pay every year. I definitely don't agree with that. But, you know, I agree with you. There's a fine line between, you know, regulating too far and what is considered safe and correct. And I feel like, me personally, I feel like this committee is, you know, on the same page when it comes to that. We want what's best for the community and for the tourists that come up here, while at the same time making it fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Any other thoughts on this?
When this whole thing was brought up, there were two major concerns. Those two major concerns are still right there. Number one is the middle of the night, I don't have anybody to contact. I don't know who to call, because nobody knows who owns the property. We have no kind of registration. We don't even know who owns apartment buildings in North Market. So nothing about short-term rentals. And the second thing is, we're opening the community to a liability issue if we are not making sure that these places pass the code, because we have in our code now that any rental property must abide by life safety code. So if something should happen to somebody, and it comes back and determined that was the building didn't pass life safety code, we're gonna get called on carpet as well as the owner. So those were the major concerns when we started this whole thing 2 years ago. I just want to make sure that we still, that's basically where we were coming from back then. I like the look. Bar Harbor looks really good.
Yeah, and just to add to that, so I'm not from the town of Bar Harbor, from the next town over, and I have a short-term rental there, and they have no restrictions whatsoever. Bar Harbor is the only town on the island that's gone through any of this. They've got the biggest shortage, of course, but they have hashed and rehashed this over decades. I mean, so this is very well worn in what they provided here. They've had a lot of experience with it. And if you look at any of the rental inspection check sheets, it's not very difficult to pass. You need to have a fire extinguisher, you need to have egress points. Like, it's not, and I've stayed in some short-term rentals in Bar Harbor that were not very good, and they still have their certificate up on the wall. So they're not, you know, it's not like we have to make major renovations too as well in order to pass the basics. So I think just having everything at a baseline standard makes sense.
Appreciate that insight into Bar Harbor. I did call them to get their experience, and I believe they just tried calling me back. They laughed when I told them we're looking at doing the same thing here.
I say, good luck. Good customer ever.
But to your point, though, this is very refined. They spent a long time going through it, and I feel it doesn't offer any more restrictions generally than what was intended originally. If there are, we can amend that, we can change it.
But the minimum amount of nights, for example, that's a very popular thing to do.
Right.
Down at Bar Harbor, 4 nights, 7 nights, that kind of.
Yeah.
I don't think that makes sense at all up here, because people are coming for 2 days now. 99% of our reservations are 2 nights. They're coming up to Snowmobile for the weekend, and they're coming up to climb Katahdin, and then they're going home, so.
anything under 30 days.
Yeah.
Less than 30 days. What I would suggest. But this is something we can also take home and write up and make suggested changes to reflect kind of what we'd like to see. At least we kind of created the spirit of what we would like to achieve in the last document, so we can make sure that those thoughts are still applied here. But again, I would suggest we take this home and bring this back and go through it and then bring it to the council.
Is it a letter or?
Any other thoughts on that? Charlie?
Yep. Just a thought that, I'm sure what this conversation is going to lead to is half the housing in Millinocket today is unavailable to short-term rentals. If you want to open up to the possibility of having a tourist community, you have to open up this town. I'll keep it that simple. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. And I know that we had asked the planning board to look at accessory dwelling units as well, especially in the new development area, because right now you can only inhabit one main part of the home and you can't rent out anything else. So we will hear back at some point on that as well.
Right, but that's not a planning board. That's not a
Going to the
planning
state.
No, that is Great Northern Paper Company, which is now Arcadad. It's in the leases. Arcadad would have to okay to change the leases, not the town of Oregon. We don't restrict that. That restriction was done by Great Northern back when they. Now it would be, and right now I don't believe that Arcadad is doing anything with that, unless they got a complaint from a neighbor, and then would be what they would do after that. Right now, that's all controlled by the deed.
Then I know the state is,
My take on the proposed state law is that it outrules local municipalities say in the matter. It's allowed.
so there's a proposed change to where accessory dwelling units are allowed statewide.
Yes.
And that supersedes.
But it would not supersede Great Northern. It would supersede anything that the town did.
Right.
Well, don't you find
But
too,
those-
Tom, that the covenants, that they never stood by the covenants?
They never stood by me either, no.
Well,
It's too
those
expensive.
deeds also say that you can't serve alcohol or make alcohol.
There goes your beer brewing.
Well,
No room.
no homebrew kits, no scooting, there's those deeds.
But it's expensive to
Yeah.
uphold those deed covenants, and
Right.
most landlords or landowners have vacated enforcement. So chances are our town doesn't have the funds to be able to enforce and take people to court and sue them, do this and do that, because that's what they pay. So I think it might be easy to get them to sidestep and say they're not gonna enforce the covenants of the deeds. And that's all that we have to do. But back in the day, Great Northern did zip to enforce their covenants. And those are not enough.
That's, I hadn't thought of it that way, Tom, that's good, that's good input.
Well, it's just, we can spin our wheels over stuff like that really isn't gonna do us any good, because we really don't have any control. There's really nothing we can do, other than going to Arcadad and saying, where are you gonna stand with this? Because if I know that there are Airbnbs in Montgomery right now. I know there are rental properties in Montgomery. We don't check on those. That's not, you know, as far as we're concerned, that's up to the owner. But rather than getting all tied up in things like that, that we don't really have a way to change other than going to our town and say, where are you standing on this? My thought.
That'd be a good next step on that then. That's right.
Yeah, so that's what I understood, that Charlie's question was, we have two zones right now where you can have short-term rentals and where you supposedly can't have, you know. And the new development was one of those that you're not supposed to have short-term rentals, and like you said, it's happening.
Or
So-
long-term rentals.
Or long-term, I'm
long-term,
sorry, or
yeah.
long-term rentals,
Anyway.
right? And that was a lot of the discussion of the planning board. It never really got resolved, so that is part of the picture of the discussion here going forward. Do we look to rezone, or can we rezone?
The new development is done then.
Right, I know. Right, so
That's
part of
still
the
our new
conversation.
development.
Yeah, that is, you're right.
And in the proposal from the planning board, it specifically only referenced R1 zoning. I would suggest that we don't have that restriction because there are people like Celeste and Patrick who have a commercially zoned building up by Stearns Lumber, where they've converted some of those to long-term and or short-term rentals. They wouldn't be able to apply for this license if we only do it in R1. Are there any thoughts on that? Opening it up to the town in general, so long as it complies with zoning?
Yeah, I mean, there are other, you know, Airbnbs in commercial properties, you know, right along Comstock Avenue as well. Yeah, I think there's going to be able to improve them, you know, legitimately. And in all fairness.
I mean, what this does, which I think we should do, is just refer back to our existing ordinances. And if there are ordinances where you can't inhabit at all, then that should apply in general across the board. And anything between that and, you know, R1.
The only thing when we do that, when we look at putting commercial buildings in, the life safety code is different if it's a commercial building. And there is a commercial business going on there for what's required as far as safety. Have time over that kind of business. Just things we would keep.
And that would apply to even long-term rental anyway.
That's any,
Yeah.
yes,
So,
any mixed occupancy.
so I think what this does is just refer back to the local ordinances as they exist. And that's all we should really look at, in my opinion. All right, unless there's any other thoughts on this, we can take this home also and mark it up and bring it back with suggested changes. That work?
Works for me.
All right. Well, we're adjourned.
All right. Thank you all for joining us, Charlie and Matt. Good to see you
Thank
all.
you, everyone.
Hi, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.